That's why I've been running a workshop. I call it Kill Your Startup in 90 Minutes. Because would you prefer to kill your idea in 90 minutes, or would you rather spend 3 years and thousands of pounds trying to develop this product? Or, so of course the answer is I want to kill it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a huge step in the journey for me. And what I think my job is as an innovation coach is, one, to help people understand how to run customer interviews, how Strategizer does it. The other step is to say, what is your business model right now? Because that's going to be a mess of a conversation if you don't use the tools. It just always is. I've never been in a conversation about a business model that hasn't sounded like blah, 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 when we haven't had a visual and that I can actually pin the person down. Otherwise, it gets very fluffy. Oh, it might be this. It might be this. Oh, I think it's this. Oh, but that's obvious. No, nothing's obvious. I don't understand what's in your brain. I need to get it out and put it on paper.
Welcome to the Success Consultancy's Just Great People podcast, the podcast that introduces you to ordinary people who've done extraordinary things. My name is Barry Eustance, and I'd like to introduce you to today's guest. Hi everybody, it's Barry Eustance here from the Success Consultancy's Just Great People podcast. Delighted to bring to you Nick Himowicz, an independent innovation coach. Nick, you will remember, did a fantastic podcast with us last time on the Invincible Company, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that soon. Nick, welcome. Thank you for coming back on the Just Great People podcast.
It's a pleasure to be speaking with you again, Barry.
Great. Well, listen, just for our dear listener and viewer, we'll do a little bit of background. We're going to run this completely dynamically. So Nick will flash up screen shares as and when the conversation drives us in that direction. So enjoy it with us. It's going to be live. These, as you know, are never scripted. So Nick, over to you. What's you been doing? You've been a busy guy. You've been over in Ireland. You've been talking about the Invincible Company, which is something we touched on last time. So over to you. I'll sit in the corner and ask the questions that our listener and viewers would like to ask of you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I was just at the Reinvention Summit hosted by Aidan McCullen and Nadia Zeksenbayeva, and it was an absolutely fantastic event. Learned a lot, and I'd recommend the viewers go and watch the recordings. There were some fantastic recordings that they've shared on YouTube, the Reinvention Summit YouTube channel. Really, really good. So I was there, met lots of great people. And we were just talking about Peter's talk as well. Barry, was there anything you wanted to say about that?
Oh, yeah. We were talking about our great friend, Peter Compo. Peter is the author of The Emergent Approach to Strategy. Peter was at the conference and was talking to, and a complimentary host with Alex Osterwalder, who is, of course, the head at Strategizer. So there's a great deal of interaction here. Nick will talk to you all about Strategizer. But Peter was there, and actually, Nick was telling me that Peter's video so far has got the greatest number of views. So well done for Peter Compo and the Emergent Approach to Strategy. And what was your takeaway, Nick, from the conference?
There were so many. I've got notes and notes of things that I wrote down. One of I think the most important things that really was important for me individually, but I'm sure will be very important for those listening as well, was something that Seth Godin said. Seth talked about this idea that you choose your customers and you choose your future. He didn't quite say it exactly like that, but it's such a great point, because in the beginning, who you decide to work with will dictate the type of business that you have and how hard your life will be. So picking the right customers early on is absolutely essential. So for me, that was amazing.
And what was the guidance? Because that, for some people, would be a bit of anathema, really. Look, you're talking there broadly about the Pareto principle, isn't it? As applied to your customers, that something like 0.64% of your customers are going to generate something like 60% of your income. Who to focus on, how to maximize time. So walk me through it. You were at the conference, I wasn't, folks. What was the big thought that emerged from that? And why is it so important to people from a strategic point of view?
The big thought that I got from it was that, actually, I was talking to Alex Osterwalder about this, and we were talking about one of Alex Hormozi's videos, which actually relates to this topic. And Alex Hormozi says that you need to pick customers. Like, the first thing is, when you pick your market, you need to make sure that they've actually got money to spend and that the sales cycles are not really difficult, right? Because if you pick a market where they don't have money and there's long, difficult sales cycles, you've got problems from the beginning. And now when we relate this back to Seth Godin's point around pick your customers and choose your future, this is why it's important. This is why it impacted me so much, because us in the innovation industry or innovation consultants, I'm trying to help people do stuff for the future. This is very dangerous because it's not actually a pain that people have right now. Like, for example, the Invincible Company is essentially, how do you build a company that lasts and is successful long term? But a lot of companies right now are not worried about surviving long term. They're worried about surviving the next quarter. So you've got to do this whole educational part around helping them understand that they do need to do that as well. And you need to do both at the same time. But that's quite a difficult market to be in. So this was hugely impactful because we need to think about ways, okay, well, how do we work around that? Or how do we change our market slightly? And how do we adapt? By picking this idea of being in innovation, you're picking a market that's very, very difficult to be successful consistently because it's very feast and famine. Sometimes you'll get very big contracts and that's great, but then there'll be other times, like with economic downturns, what happens? Everyone cuts innovation budgets because they're only worried about the next 3 quarters. And so that was something that was, I think, very impactful for me. It's something that I've known about in the past. I've thought about it in the past, but it just got me again right now. So that was something that's really important.
And we're entering a period of extreme uncertainty right now. Predicting the future is becoming an increasingly more difficult thing to do. Isn't it interesting, though, and takeaway that perhaps should be probed further? Why do people think about the next quarter? What is it that drives that short-term thinking when in fact an organization is not a short-term project, it's a long-term project? I mean, look, we've seen some global players whose focus on the next quarter have cost them dearly, very dearly, and possibly threaten the viability of their organization. So the short-termism is a very interesting dynamic, isn't it? Why have we picked up this mentality of short-termism? And I go to Paddy Nolan, who I spoke to, who was a luxury performance coach and had worked with some of the biggest luxury brand names on the planet, whose history goes back not a few decades, but hundreds of years. And they are still reaping those rewards of selecting the right products for the right customers. So why is it that we've gone down this rabbit hole of chase the next quarter's earnings? What is it, Nick, do you think?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is something that Tendai Vicky says, partner at Strategizer. He says that leadership is really about stewardship, about being a steward for the company. And stewardship is 2 things. One, making sure that your company is safe today. That's part of stewardship. But another part of stewardship is making sure that your company is safe for the future and for future generations. And what we tend to do is we overemphasize the keeping it safe today and we underemphasize keeping it safe for the future. But actually, to be like a successful leader, you do both. Now, it's because with a lot of pressure, especially with stock markets, there's a lot of pressure for the next quarter. And that just is massive. And so what happens is if we often find, either if we're hiring in a CEO or if we are the CEO ourselves, we're trying to be like, make sure we're getting our numbers up for right now. But the problem is, like, we haven't educated people that we also should be looking at other markers for success. Like, for example, a really good example is the difference between Steve Ballmer versus Satya Nadella. So Steve Ballmer was fantastic at the next quarter, right? Everything was up. He was doing great. Whereas Satya Nadella, he's managed to create the right culture and be very successful for steadying the ship for right now, hitting targets, but also he set the company up really well over the time that he's been there. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think it's more that people aren't educated on how to think long term and judge leaders and companies for the long term. And all the kind of systems and metrics are set up for judging people and companies in the next quarter.
Yeah, and we need to move away from that. Again, one of my interviewees was Francis Wade of Framework Consulting. They actually go out 25 years. When they have to do the retreats, they go out 25 years and have the demographic in the room, the people who are about to retire, the people who just joined the company, and actually asking them the sort of multidimensional question: if you were a 20-year-old now, to the older members, what would you have done differently 20, 30 years ago? And they start looking from 25 years out and start building back to the present to try and establish that longer term perspective. And the Invincible Company is something we spoke about at length perhaps not long enough, which is why we're here again. Last time we spoke. So tell me about the Invincible Company, because I think that's starting to emerge quite significantly in your life, isn't it?
Definitely. So talking about Tendai Vicky again, I consider him a mentor. He said to me, Nick, one of the most important things you could do is just properly study the Invincible Company. And that was a few years ago now. And so in my calendar, I still have a reminder every day at 11:30 to read the Invincible Company. I don't do it every day, but I have spent a lot of time reading this book. And what I found is that when you look at the contents page, it's actually not very clear. It's quite a hard to navigate book. It's the kind of book that people have on their shelf, but they haven't actually read. And I've spent a lot of time, you can see all the sticky notes that I've got in it from different sections. And what I've realized is that when you look at the contents page, it's more talking about tools rather than outcomes. So the chapter titles are Tool, Manage, Invent Pattern Library, Improve Pattern Library, and Culture, which doesn't say a lot and it doesn't help you navigate it. And then when you look into the subcategories, then it's just got portfolio map, explore, exploit portfolio, explore. It's not helping you understand what this is really for and how it can be so useful. So I've really dug deep and I'm now starting to understand how to navigate the book better. And also I'm understanding, because it almost very quickly in hardly many pages defines what an invincible company is, first of all. And I think that you could write a whole book on what do we mean by what is an invincible company? Because actually, I think it's a genius title, but I think it's almost too clever. Because what we all do want to create an invincible company. By invincible, we mean a company that lasts for a long time. I might actually show a visual now. I was speaking to Alex Osterwalder at Reinvention Summit, and I said to him, Alex, I feel like there was a missing visual from the book. And I showed him this and, I had to be, it was a bit cocky to do that. But to his credit, he went, yeah, you're right. Yeah, this is really good. So I want to show you now, because this will help you understand what do we really mean by an invincible company. Let me find it. Just finding the visual. Got it. Great. So let me share my screen. So what do we really mean by an invincible company? Well, first, let's look at most companies. Most companies start and then stop. Often, in under a year, they're finished. Yeah. We don't want to be like most companies. Okay. This is what we don't want to do. What we want to do is build an invincible company that goes on and on and on, and it's gone off beyond the scale. That's what we want. So now when you understand, what one do you want? Do you want to be like most companies, or do you want to be an invincible company? Of course, you want to be an invincible company. The book is a guide to be able to help you create that. That's why the book is so special. It's a very simple idea. I think this visual helps bring it to life.
And we will have, dear listener and viewer, a link to the Invincible Company for your information and for your acquisition. Nick, that visual is so clear, and it does present a very stark contrast between the short-termism and the long-term strategic thinking that does need to transform the commercial environment generally, I think. Would that be a fair comment, or am I once again going out on a limb and making completely unjustified generalizations?
No, I think this is great. We want to have these companies that are surviving a long time. And I think, for example, if you've got these big companies that have got hundreds of thousands of employees, I don't think it's a good thing if they go bust overnight.
No. Sustainability is a very overused term contextually, because it's been aligned to a particular philosophy about green and environmental sustainability. One of the S's in success is about sustainability. And sustainability means not only being kind to your environment and being respectful of the environment and taking green initiatives and so forth, but actually it also means about being commercially sustainable. Sustainability is actually that ability to be sustainable in diverse economic environments throughout the business cycle. And it's not an easy gig, is it, Nick? It requires a lot of thought, a lot of innovation, and a lot of invention. And we can come on to that, because that was the concluding part of our last podcast, that invention is actually an optional part of innovation. Bombshell. And on that bombshell, we said we'd come back and talk about it.
Yeah. So there's a few different definitions of innovation that I like. Historically, I've liked innovation equals invention plus commercialization. Okay. Yeah. This was one of the definitions that I heard while I was studying innovation management in 2012. And I liked it because there's a way you could break it up into two things. One, it's about creativity, coming up with new ideas, and two, implementation. actually putting them into practice and creating value and capturing value as a result. Okay, so that's one definition. But in the Invincible Company, Alex Osterwalder said that successful innovation is R&D is optional. Yeah, so R&D plus business R&D. Okay, so this is about customer value, like understanding your customer and then creating a business model around it. And then 3, execution. So R&D, business R&D, execution. But the R&D part is actually completely optional. Okay. When I first saw this, it made me think about Steve Jobs going to Xerox, finding the mouse, and then being like, oh, that already exists. I didn't invent that, but I'm going to be really good at the customer value part and really good at the business model part and really good at the execution part. So to me, I'm like, makes sense. It's good, even though it's like not the original definition of innovation that I really loved. This one's now, I think, taken over it because it shows that the intervention part is optional.
And so for clarity, the R&D, the non-business R&D is optional, but the business R&D is non-optional. Is that correct for the benefit of our listeners, esteemed listeners and viewers?
And by business R&D, we mean creating customer value and creating a business model around that enables you to create, deliver, and capture value.
Yeah, so customer-centric value propositions are absolutely crucial. And wouldn't you say, well, isn't that a slap forehead moment where you go, well, that's obvious, isn't it? And yet, people are still not focusing on that. People are still going the short-term route, looking for short-term gains. They're still chasing the wrong customers or too many customers. And actually, would it be your view perhaps that for many organizations, it's better to chase fewer customers with a better proposition than lots of customers with no particularly clearly identified or articulated proposition?
Yeah, definitely. 90% of the people, the companies that I work with, the problem that they've got, if they're in an early stage working on either starting from scratch, completely new startup, or just building a new product in an established company, what they'll be doing is spending way too long on product development without having spoken to a customer. And most of them think that customer interviews involve having spent minimum a month, or I'll say it'll be a month or 3 months, but it ends up being a year or 3 years. And then their idea of a customer interview is to like be sweating as they see the customer and be like, here's my thing, please tell us that you like it. Like, and that's the customer. And then they go under pressure, yeah, we like it. And they go, and then they come to me and say, don't worry, we've done customer interviews, check. And that's their customer interview. Like, that genuinely is what they think a customer interview is for like so many of the people that I've worked with. But actually the customer interview is better, like it should become before, during, and after product development. But you want to be speaking to your customers straight away. You don't need to have the thing. First of all, you should be understanding like and validating their problem. They've got the problem that you think they have, and then making sure that that is correct. And this goes back. This is the first thing. Have they got money to actually solve that problem? Is it a painful enough problem that they would spend the money that they've got on it? And is it something ideally that's a recurring problem that happens frequently, or is it one-off? And does that customer have a very difficult sales process to be able to get the money out of them? Because if it is, then what you should be doing is pivoting either the problem or pivoting the customer. And it's much better to do that in the beginning than first of all doing 1, 2, 3 years of product development and then going, oh no, and then working it out. Because would you rather have to pivot? Would you rather pivot? Well, no, it might not be the wrong product. It might be the right product for the wrong customer.
Yes, exactly.
Or it might be the right product for the right customer, but it's the wrong problem.
Yeah,
the problem's not right. That's also possible. That's why I've been running a workshop here in Moldova. I call it Kill Your Startup in 90 Minutes. Because would you prefer to kill your idea in 90 minutes, or would you rather spend 3 years and thousands of pounds trying to develop this product? Or, so of course the answer is I want to kill it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a huge step in the journey for me. And what I think my job is as an innovation coach is, one, to help people understand how to run customer interviews, how Strategizer does it. And the other step then also is to say, what is your business model right now? Because that's going to be a mess of a conversation if if you don't use the tools. It just always is. I've never been in a conversation about a business model that hasn't sounded like blah 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 when we haven't had a visual and that I can actually pin the person down to force, because otherwise it gets very fluffy. Oh, it might be this. It might be this. Oh, I think it's this. Oh, but that's obvious. No, nothing's obvious. I don't understand what's in your brain. I need to get it out and put it on paper and like pinpoint, because the founders want to make their business model seem bigger and crazier than it is, because they don't want to be seen as like doing something simple or basic. So they always try to make it more complicated. But you need to have the visual and pin them down and force them to fill it out and then say, it's this, right? Is it this? And and you make them go, yeah, that's 100%. Obviously, you don't force them to say, yeah, that's 100%. But you get to the point where they're like, yeah, this is what it is. And you've boiled it down. So it should be quite clear and it should be quite basic. But only because you pushed them, you managed to get it out and they actually agree 100% that, yeah, that is what my vision is right now. And you can do another business model to say, the business model for the next 6 months is this, but this is what we want it to be in the next 10 years. And you can do both. That's fine. But get them both out and separate them, because otherwise you've got this mess of like multi-year business models in one thing. Yeah. And no one understands what's going on in the conversation, because you don't know if you're talking about the current business model as it is right now, which might be very limited because you just started, or the future vision, which is this big thing that has so many if clauses in it that you don't know if it's actually going to work. So that's why the visual tools are so powerful. And my job is to get it out of your head. And then the next part is to say, what assumptions are we making in this? So for every element of it, what are we guessing? What are we saying? What needs to be correct for this to work? So pull all those out and then systematically test those, all of them. And that's my job, is to every week speak with the founders, extract the business model, and then say, what experiment are we running next? And next week, okay, what did you do? What did you learn? What are we going to do differently? What are we going to change? Are we going to persevere? Are we going to pivot? Or are we going to kill this idea? And that's what I do with my clients. And the ones that are the best, we kill it. We kill those ideas quicker. And then we move on to the next one.
I was going to say, is there a reluctance, do you think, for people to kill ideas because of emotional or professional attachment? Is there a resistance, or are people go, yeah, actually, that is a good idea. Let's kill that and move on to the next one that's actually going to work? What's your experience, and what would your guidance be to companies who are hanging on to ideas that perhaps have either outlived their usefulness or never had usefulness at all?
It's all about education. Because if you learn this stuff earlier on, you get it and you're like, oh, okay, cool. I understand it. I don't need to have like an emotional reaction to it being wrong. I can understand that's just part of it and I need to move forward. But if you are heavily invested in an idea and you're super senior in the company, you're the CEO, there's a more likely chance that it's going to become a zombie project. This idea of or the CEO's pet innovation project, it can be called as well, where these projects just go on and on and on because people don't want to say, hold on, this is no good, you know? So once you just explain like some stories around killing ideas, having an experiment-based approach, people get it. But it's tough if you're trying to teach people that midway through having spent tens of thousands of pounds on something already or more and years, you know? So yeah, it can be difficult at that stage. But typically I work with companies that have seen my content and are already like bought into the scientific approach, methodology of Strategizer. So I don't tend to have too many big problems unless I'm being brought in at a level which is under the CEO, and that the CEO's already had a vision and is into it. Then things are very difficult. Yeah.
And conceptually, what we're talking about here is build, measure, learn, pivot. Is the Eric Ries kind of concept of a lean startup, or any startup really. I mean, Google are extremely good at build, measure, learn, pivot, and ditch as soon as it's proved to be a non-viable project for whatever reason.
I would say that it's totally lean startup from Eric Ries and Steve Blank, but it's definitely not build, measure, learn. It's more learn, build, measure. And actually it's more of like a cycle. It's a messy go in between all of them.
But no sacred cows. And I was having a really interesting conversation with Tim Miller, who is the leader of the Red Arrows, about leadership and doing the right thing, but also that his view was that good leaders should be more than happy to receive constructive criticism, more than happy to go, yeah, actually, I've got it wrong. Let's move on to the next thing that we can do so that we don't repeat that mistake. I think it would be fair to say that perhaps in your experience and mine, that we've come across perhaps more than there should be a propensity for there to be this unwillingness to accept that when things are wrong, fess up to it, accept it, change it, move on. And that must be an innovation inhibitor, surely, when you have that kind of cultural issue that you're sticking with or running into as a consultant.
Yeah, I think it's going to be less of a problem, because the companies that aren't able to take feedback well, they're going to be dead, because I'm using ChatGPT now for everything, right? And I'm constantly asking it for feedback. I'm taking whatever's on my computer screen, I'm taking a screenshot of it and getting feedback constantly. So for example, I'm making a video. So I've just posted a video, the first in the series about the Invincible Company, with an Invincible Company I found here in Moldova. And I'm taking screenshots of the video and getting feedback on color grading. I'm saying, like, how do I match each clip better? And it's saying, do this, do this, do this. I'm saying, like, I want to make this type of typography, this type of design. How do I, like, what buttons do I actually click in my software? Help me work that, how to do it. And it's telling me exactly what to do. And I'm getting feedback on the script. I'm getting feedback on the titles. I'm getting it to, I'm taking a screenshot of all my YouTube thumbnails and saying, like, does this fit with everything else? Like, I'm just getting it to constantly give feedback on myself. So I'm learning now faster than I've ever learned before, because I don't need to wait for somebody else. And also I've got almost like the best. There are things where it's not the best, or it will make mistakes, and you kind of need to be an expert to know when it's wrong. But it is really good at like saying, do this better, or try this, or do that. It says try this. It's not, at the moment, I've found that it's really good for incremental improvements, but for more radical things, for like saying, okay, here's what I've got, help me make it better. It will not it's not very good at saying, no, it needs to be over here, or even here's like a medium jump away from it. It's normally pretty good at saying, like, okay, we're keeping within the confines of roughly what it is. So if you give it something a bit rubbish, it's not going to make it, like, it will make it 20, 30% better. But if you give it something that you already like had working quite well, it's going to really refine it and make it really, really good. So the reason why I say this is because if we've got AI helping us be better, those companies that aren't taking feedback on, they're going to be left behind. So
absolutely.
You have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the use of AI is actually an essential now, I think, provided it's used with critical thinking, and that the human intervention, gross error checking it, multiple iterations to get an answer that is right. And also the prompts are critically important, i.e., don't give me rubbish. Don't tell me what you think I want to know. Tell me what I need to know. Make sure it's factually correct and attributable, and then we can work with it. So, Nick, for companies of all sizes and all stages of evolution, as we sort of get towards, again, the top of the hour here for us, it's just whistling past again. How did that happen? We have to do another one in about 3 or 4 months' time. The takeaway for companies then, who, wherever they are, whatever their stage of evolution, what are the takeaways, the simple ideas, because we've been talking previously, I think, about simplicity as well, of thinking and of structures and of modeling. What are the takeaways for these companies? What do they need to know from Nick? Simples is a great example, because it actually it feeds back to the previous conversation we had.
Definitely. Okay, so Simples has a portfolio of 10 million. Okay, so Simples has a portfolio of businesses that last year did 10 million euros in revenue. Now, remember, this is in Moldova, and so 10 million euros goes a long way compared to, for example, in the UK. I think if this was in the UK, you'd be treating it more like a 20 or 30 million euro a year company. They've got a lot of different business units that sell different things, and online platforms. Like I say, I'll show you here. They're in online platforms. They've got video production, news platforms. They do sports events. They run the the biggest marathon in the country. They do consumer technology as well. They moved into more recently. They do government. They also do solar tech and lots of different. They're in lots of different industries. So what did they do in the beginning? Well, in the beginning, if we use the environment map, which is one of Strategizer's tools, there are two sides I want to look at here. One is market forces. What they realized was there were a lot of unmet market needs in Moldova. People were not being served here because there was a lot of these international companies, which we'll see over here in the industry forces. Foreign companies were ignoring Moldova. Google, for example, only just recently started doing Google ads here in this country. And actually, you can't pay for Google Premium in Moldova, right? So that's just one example of international companies ignoring it. There's no Amazon here, so it's quite difficult to buy books and everything. It's actually really difficult. So there's a lot of companies ignoring Moldova. So what Simpals has been able to do is learn from big international companies in other countries and apply what they've learned from them here. And they've done a great job. So let's look at another thing here. We've got the corporate identity triangle. This is another tool from Strategizer, and we talk about three things: strategy, story, and culture. Now, the best way to describe Simpals is that they are explorers. And when I saw this, I just thought this is meant to be, because you've got explore and you've got exploit. In companies need to do both. And Simpals, literally on their website, they call themselves "We Are Explorers." They're always searching for what's coming next, while simultaneously managing the business for today. And so there are three things in their strategy. They focus predominantly on local needs. That's what they've done for the past 20 years or more, 20 or more years. Although I'll touch on that again in a minute. They want to be the default solution in the markets that they're in. They solve recurring problems that people have again and again, and they decide to prioritize long-term impact and doing what's good for the local community, even at the detriment of making profit. So the founder said, look, if there's a year where we lose a bit of money, that's okay, as long as we're having a massive impact. It reminds me a little bit of Virgin in how they work. They've got lots of different companies, right? And they've got a portfolio of businesses. And, Richard Branson does a lot of stuff that's good for the community as well. So, story. These guys are proudly Moldovan. In Moldova, a lot of people grow up believing that you need to leave to be successful. But the founder, he actually has decided to stay. He said, no, we can show that it's possible to be successful staying here at home in Moldova. So they've really focused on making products and services that can help Moldovans thrive, but they're always pushing boundaries. They've created products now that they're selling in China, in America, all across Europe, all across the world. So even though they've focused on solving local needs, they've actually expanded and they've done amazing things like the product that helps you swim underwater and hear your swimming coach while they're giving you instructions, or Sonar Music, which enables you to listen to music while you're swimming underwater. And they've sold that all over China, and the lessons that they've learned along the way have been amazing. And so they're proving that you can stay in Moldova and be successful. And then in terms of the culture side, so it's all about doing good for the community. They love being the first to solve problems, like being able to listen to your coach underwater, and they'll take on challenges that others won't. They've done stuff like planting thousands and thousands and thousands of trees. And they've run the major marathons. They organize those here. They've even put on marathons, like super long distance ones, from Chisinau to Bucharest, which is that's really far. That's like an 8-hour drive. Right. So they're doing really interesting things, and they're really helping the community. A thing to think about here is to go, first of all, think about your environment. What's the market doing? Let's understand that first. And then on the other side, what is the industry doing, and what can we learn from that as well? That's on the environmental side. And then in terms of your identity, understand, okay, what's our strategy? And then 2, what's our story? And then 3, what's the culture that we need to be able to make all these things happen? And just spending a little bit of time on that especially early on, is really helpful, but also helpful even if you're an established company that's been going for years. So this is something that I think is really important. And hopefully you saw with the Simpals example how powerful it can be.
Absolutely. And they look like the sort of organization who's likely to end up with $1 billion in revenue over the longer term. And that's really important, isn't it? I love the name Simples. It kind of focuses the mind. And simple messaging's culturally very important. The community really being stakeholder focused. And the stakeholder isn't just the shareholder, it's everybody connected with the business, I think is a great takeaway for everybody. So, Nick, as always, a really valuable conversation. I'm sure this will be immensely helpful to entrepreneurs and C-suite executives all over the place, because it's the same messages really pervade, don't they? It's about that ability to be agile, adaptive, stakeholder focused, having the right tools, keeping it simple, getting it out there, not having the blah, blah, blah conversations, but actually committing it, testing it, and having someone, Nick Himowicz, here to work through and ensure that innovation, invention, business development, business R&D all come together, and that remains customer focused with a value proposition that actually sells, not only now, but in the long term. Nick, is there anything I've missed?
No, you did a fantastic summary there.
I'll copyright it. That's great. Nick, always a pleasure. Listen, we must get you on again when your diary permits. Nick is incredibly busy, folks, and it's taken us a little while to get this together, and I'm delighted we have, because it's always worthwhile. Nick Himowicz from Moldova and everywhere from the Just Great People podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Many thanks for listening to our Just Great People podcast. And you can really help us. Please do remember to like and subscribe, and please share this podcast with everybody you know. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's it for today's Just Great People podcast from the Success Consultancy. We hope and trust you've enjoyed it. Please join us next time, and please do remember to subscribe. Thanks for joining us.